Was wäre eine South by Southwest 2019, wenn man nicht zumindest einen Vortrag zum Thema Blockchain besucht? Ich habe mir mal einen ausgesucht, wo Blockchain for Everyone als Titel draufgestanden ist, und als ich mir dann den Vortragenden angesehen habe im Vorfeld, habe ich mir gedacht, ich zeichne diesen Vortrag ausnahmsweise mal auf, was ziemlich lang gedauert hat. Der Vortrag dauert ca. 50 Minuten, aber ja, es wird eigentlich sehr, sehr einfach und auch sehr unterhaltsam erklärt. Basiswissen zum Thema Blockchain. Und ich würde vorschlagen, schaut euch den einfach einmal an, und ich bereite mich in der Zwischenzeit einmal vor auf den nächsten Vortrag, aber dazu später. Ciao!
Good afternoon! How's everybody? Yeah? Good. I'm John Hargrave. I am the author of the forthcoming bestseller, Blockchain for Everyone. Available for pre-order on Amazon today, and this is the most exciting time to be alive in human history, ever. I started my career during the dot-com revolution, 1995, and I was working for a technology media company called Ziff Davis. They published computer magazines. And for the younger folks, magazines were these stacks of colored paper that were sold in these things called bookstores. And it was the greatest time because we were building a .com, ZDNet.com, still one of the biggest computing sites around, at the same time as we were covering .coms. And there was so much energy and so much excitement and so much money flowing into this .com world that I never thought I would be lucky enough to see it a second time in my career. But if anything, this time it's better. Blockchain is more exciting, it's more intellectually fascinating, and there's more money coming into this system than even during the dot-com days. If you look at the sweep of technology revolutions throughout history, the dot-com revolution in 1995 was just the tail end of what we might call the age of information and telecommunication, the tipping point, as it were. And in 1995, it was really hard to explain to people what the web was, much less why you would need it or how to get online. And by the year 2000, it was the hottest thing on Wall Street. Right? Dot-coms were all the rage. That happened in 5 years. And in blockchain, that's happening again, but now it's happening even faster. But we are still early days. Now my son, he's 17 years old, and he's brilliant. He built his own Bitcoin mining rig. And he looked at this and he said, Dad, I think you're being a little bit too optimistic here. I think we're actually much earlier down in the innovation side of the technology adoption curve. And I said to him, shut up. I'm giving the talk, South by, and he said, yeah, but I'm writing the talk for you. That's a good point. But we're agreed that we're not late in the game. It's still early stage, and that's why this is the perfect time to get involved. You're in the right place today. How many of you out here own Bitcoin or some kind of digital asset, Ethereum, Ripple, so hold them high, hold them way loud and proud. Okay, so I'd say about half, roughly. So we're going to call you guys the blockchain experts here, and the rest of you are probably blockchain novices. So I'm going to start at the beginning and try to explain blockchain in a really fun and friendly way by using blocks and chains. So imagine we had a $5 bill, and every time I paid you $5, we recorded that permanent ink on a block of wood. Then you give the $5 to someone else, we record that, and then we chain it together. So now we have an indelible permanent record of who paid what to whom. We call that immutable. And we also have a chain of transactions, so we can see the order in which they took place. And now let's say that we take this blockchain and we put it out in the middle of Austin for everybody to see. So everybody can see, kind of open source, the chain of transactions that happen. My friend Jim actually did this. He did it kind of as a goof. He called it the literal blockchain. But this went mega viral. And what he said was like, if you pay me money, I'll let you sponsor a block in my literal blockchain, like the way you buy a memorial brick at the school playground. And went viral. He ended up raising thousands of dollars for charity, and this thing stretched all the way across his basement and back. He had to spool it on these long spools. I said, that's kind of a good way of explaining blockchain. Who knows what this is here? Somebody. Yes, ma'am, right? A ledger. So this is one of the greatest inventions in human history. It let us keep track of who paid what to whom. If you've used a checkbook, or an online checking account, or QuickBooks, or Quicken, you used a modern day version of a ledger. So it's not a big intellectual leap to go from our chain of transactions to a ledger, where we're recording debits on one side and credits on the other, right? Got it? So all we're doing with blockchain is we're putting that out for the world to see. We're open sourcing it. We're decentralizing it, meaning it's not stored on a central QuickBooks file. It's not stored with your accountant or with your bank. It's distributed or decentralized in the same way that the internet is decentralized, right? We all understand nobody owns the internet, right? Mark Zuckerberg could not buy the internet, but it's held together through this coalition of computers. Digital assets, like Bitcoin, are also held together in this same way, through a network of, you might call them volunteers, a cloud of computers. And this slide is the key slide to get in your head. This is it. If you understand this, you understand fundamentally what blockchain is all about. It's really all you need to know. Now, most talks about blockchain at this point get mired in the details. They get mired down, and I frankly find this boring. Because you don't need to know the depth of how blockchain works any more than you need to know how an internal combustion engine works to drive a car. You don't need to understand internet protocol in order to use Google. So just think of it as a technology or a platform upon which we build applications, just as the internet is a technology upon which we build websites. On blockchain, we build applications, decentralized applications, also known as dApps, of which Bitcoin is the most well-known. Should I stop here for questions? I just laid a lot on you. What do you think? Let's decentralize my presentation here.
Yes.
Yes? Anybody have a question they want to ask to clarify any of this that we've covered so far? Be brave. I know there's a question somewhere.
Sorry?
I'll repeat it. Yeah, so the question is, does the data sit on a bunch of different computers around the world? The answer is yes. So we call it decentralized ledger technology. Decentralized means it's stored on this global network of computers. Ledger means it's this kind of shared spreadsheet, kind of a great checkbook in the sky that we all balance together. And technology, because it's technology, it's a platform. Yes, sir?
So is the main benefit transparency? Is that what the buzz is all about?
Is the main benefit transparency? So there are many benefits from this new technology that we'll talk about in a little bit. But if you think about the internet as a useful corollary, remember when you had to go look up information in a library. Remember how hard it was to just get information. And what the internet did was decentralize our access to information. I don't think any of us really understand how revolutionary this time period in history is. In 500 years, we're going to look back and go, this was the period where everybody had the total of human knowledge in their pocket. And we're the first generation to ever have that. That's huge. What blockchain is doing, as we'll discover shortly, is the same thing, but for money and for value. For money and for value. And that's hugely significant. Yes, sir?
So in your example with the traditional ledger, when John gives Bill $5, they hand something over. In the blockchain, whenever that's shown, is that just representing the promise of $5, or the block's not the actual thing?
Yeah, the question is, in that example, is it just an IOU? Are we just promising to send $5, or are we actually sending $5? That's a great question.
And how do you know when it's just a reporting of $5 being done a year ago?
That is perfect. So Does it have real value? And the answer is yes, and that's a perfect segue. Thank you so much. We got to start the story of blockchain with the story of Bitcoin, because this was the first app or thing that was built on top of blockchain. And it is the most epic origin story of all time. It's way better than any superhero origin story because it is absolutely true. This really happened in this world. This guy, his name was Satoshi Nakamoto. He had this idea. He said, it's really hard to send money. I want to make money that is as easy to send as sending an email. And so he put together this paper explaining how this thing would work. He called it Bitcoin. And then he started developing it on this online message board. He got a little tribe of programmers and enthusiasts who started to build this thing out. And at first, this Bitcoin had no value. But over time, as more and more people started to use it, it became more and more valuable. And this is a key takeaway. The more people on a blockchain, the more valuable it becomes. The blockchain is about people. The more people on a blockchain, the more valuable it becomes. And so as the users grew in Bitcoin, the value of that Bitcoin grew as well. So then Satoshi, who nobody had ever met before, he only communicated through email and through this online message board, started handing over all the source code to his companions, and then one day he vanished. He disappeared. And he left behind a fortune worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, the nature of Bitcoin is that it's like a transparent bank vault. We can all see what's in Satoshi's accounts. But the nature is also that nobody has access to it except for Satoshi. Nobody has his keys, his private keys, like his password. There's no bank that owns it, no government. So it sits there unclaimed. Who does that? Who creates this world-changing technology, makes this massive fortune, and leaves never to claim it again? You're raising your hand in the back. Did you do that? Are you Satoshi? You have a question. Go ahead. So your question is about a custodian, not like a janitor, but who actually oversees this, or how do we know that it's there? Is that the question? Yeah, I guess a useful analogy would be like a bank account. It's kind of like a bank account that everybody can see. There's an address, if you will, like an email address. It's a Bitcoin address, and it's sitting there unclaimed. So everybody has tried to figure out who this guy is, Satoshi. Newsweek thought they had him a couple years ago. They got the wrong guy. Nobody even knows if it's a guy. Maybe it's a woman. Maybe it's a group of people. Maybe it's a government. Maybe it's aliens. So then, the next thing that happened was we started to create more value in Bitcoin. So early on, there were these two guys, this guy Laszlo Hanwitz, and he basically said, look, we're talking about this stuff as like digital money. We've got to be able to buy something with it, like money. He said, I'll pay somebody 10,000 Bitcoin if you'll have 2 pizzas delivered to my house. So this other guy, Jeremy, stirred around and said, okay. So Laszlo sends him the Bitcoin. It's as easy as sending an email. Jeremy gets the Bitcoin, and he has these 2 pizzas delivered to Laszlo's house. Well, today these pizzas would be worth about $38 million. And I know what you're thinking. Did he at least get crazy quick? He got something better. What he showed was that Bitcoin has real-world value. And in a sense, he kicked off this whole $200 billion asset class. And in that sense, he got a deal. This guy's a hero of the Bitcoin story. And that's why every May 22nd, we celebrate his achievement. It's Bitcoin Pizza Day. Mark your calendar. So, in the old days, we used to use these things called paper letters, and now everybody uses email. Right? In the old days, we used to use these things, paper maps. Now everybody uses Google Maps. And in the old days, we're going to say, remember when we used these things called the paper money? Do you remember this stuff? Do you remember how dangerous it was? Because every time you left the house, you were like a target of robbery. And do you remember how it was inconvenient because if you left it at home, you couldn't buy anything? And do you remember how dangerous it was because it was totally untraceable? You could use it for criminal activity and prostitution and political bribes. I tell you today that paper money is dead. It is dead, and it is inevitable that it is going away for good. But then something funny happened. The price of Bitcoin started to rise. So first it was a few cents, and then it was a few dollars, and then it was $10, and then 1,000, and then 10,000. At the end of 2017, a single Bitcoin was worth $20,000. $20,000. So think about all these people who bought in early on, and they just got tons of Bitcoin for $10. And these folks have created massive wealth overnight. We call them blockchain whales. It's a whole new class of millionaires. And in my book, I track these folks down. I try to reverse engineer their secrets and talk about how to invest sensibly in these new blockchain assets. So as the price started to go up and up, people started to think about it like a stock. So it was intended as a currency, but people think about it like a stock. We're going to buy this digital asset, and over time we're going to hope that it rises in value like a share of Apple stock, and we're going to be able to sell it back at a profit. This is significant, because what it has created is kind of a new stock market. So Bitcoin was open source, which meant that anybody could create their own copy of it. And by doing so, and dozens and then hundreds and now thousands of people have done that, there are all these competing currencies. We call them altcoins, alternatives to Bitcoin. You might also hear them called cryptocurrencies. We believe crypto is a terrible word. Crypt means dead or mysterious, both terrible names for money. So we call them altcoins, alternatives to Bitcoin. And these are being traded globally 24 hours a day around the clock on these new digital exchanges like Binance. I call this the new New York Stock Exchange, or the New York Stock Exchange. And this is where a lot of the investment and innovation is happening today. So it's kind of new, but in a sense it's kind of old. So the original stock exchange was designed as a way for all of us to buy a little piece of a company, right? So most of us don't want to buy all of Google, or we can't afford it. We want to buy a little piece of Google. And by doing that, we share the ownership of these public companies. That's why we call them shares. If the company does well, we share in the profits. If it does poorly, we share in the risk. Shares. So shares are the critical thing to keep in your head, taking a large thing and dividing it into component pieces. Now this is happening today on the blockchain through what we call tokens. A token is a unit of value, just like the old subway tokens or video game tokens, a unit of value. So let's say, for example, you have a publicly traded company like Samsung. You divide it into pieces, into shares, just like today. But let's say now we record the ownership on the blockchain. So every time I sell you a share of Samsung stock and you buy it, we record that on this transparent database, this shared spreadsheet, this great checkbook in the sky, the blockchain. And think about what that will do, because now we have transparency. We can see who owns our public companies. It's really hard to see today. And it will also let us better organize ourselves, because now it will be transparent who owns it, and this will give power back to the people. We own these companies. We should have the power to influence their direction. I call them smart stocks. Smart stocks. But not just companies are being tokenized. So another big area is real estate. Let's say you wanted to invest in real estate in South Korea, which is very hot, but you don't have the means to go buy an entire apartment building. But the person who owns that apartment building could tokenize the ownership. In other words, they could split it into component shares, like a share of stock. And then they could buy and sell and trade those tokens on these digital exchanges, just like Bitcoin, just like these other digital assets that we're seeing. And you can buy these, hold on to them as an investment, trade them, sell them, and so forth. This is happening right now. Let's say you own a boy band. You could tokenize the future earnings of that boy band. So in other words, you could sell tokens or shares, fractional ownership of that band to the fans. And those fans would be paid back in the future like a dividend as the band generated royalties for their, from their music. Now, I was giving this talk in South Korea, and this young woman came up to me afterwards. She says, my company's actually doing this. I was a big hypothetical, but it's actually happening. So imagine as an indie artist that you are now able to raise funds or raise money by offering ownership to the fans up front. That gives you upfront cash that you can use to finance a tour or a new album or what have you. And your fans are paid on the back end out of your future earnings or out of your future royalties, almost like a bond. And think about how this will give your fans a new reason to believe in your band and to promote you to everybody. They know they're going to come to every concert, they're going to buy all the merch because they are owners. My son, who's 17 and brilliant, he bought a little, he used his holiday money one year when he was like 12 to buy shares of Tesla stock. And ever since then, he is like the greatest Tesla fan because he's an owner. He owns Tesla. Imagine if people are able to own your artistic work, fractionalized ownership, tokenized ownership recorded on the blockchain. So anything with real world value can be tokenized. There are projects right now that are tokenizing fine art, precious metals like gold, silver, commodities, and on and on and on. This is the hottest thing today in blockchain. This is very state of the art. It's called security token offerings, STOs, not STDs. STO, security means something with real world value. Token means that we tokenize or fractionalize the ownership into tiny little pieces. And an offering means we offer it to the public, STOs. All right, I'm going to stop for questions here at this point. And oh, we have two. Who's got the better question? Go ahead. The question is this more like an unregulated stock? And the answer is yes. And that is the source of a lot of friction and a lot of debate right now in the blockchain community is how will they be regulated? We're in kind of a gray area. We're in kind of like new territory. These kind of behave like stocks. People think of them like stocks, definitely. But in many cases, they're not really stocks. They're not really securities. So today, the state of the art with these STOs is to treat them like real securities, which does have good legislation in place. I could talk at length about this, but it would be extremely boring to all but securities lawyers. Yes, sir?
So you're talking about tokenizing assets, more like non-traditional assets, like a business, but like a boy band or a piece of art. How do you make that transition from a normal piece of medium or media into a tokenized asset?
So how would you tokenize a piece of fine art, for example? Well, you offer it in a similar way that you offer like an initial public offering of a company. So you actually have to list it, you have to get it out on exchanges, you have to market it, you have to have investors who come in, you have to have what's called a broker-dealer in place. There's kind of this whole network. And one of the big areas of opportunity right now is for entrepreneurs who help make this whole process easier. So there's a number of platforms right now. One of them is called Securitize, for example, and it's all about helping people more easily launch these security tokens. Right now it's very difficult, very time-consuming, very expensive, but that's going to come down in price and get easier and easier. Yes, sir?
So New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, well, most of their stock exchanges, so they rely on market makers to guarantee liquidity. Is there guaranteed liquidity in these markets?
This is a great question. So the question is around liquidity, and I'm going to try to simplify this. So a market maker is somebody who sits in the middle of a buyer and seller. So if you go to your E-Trade account and you sell Tesla stock to somebody on the other side, there's nobody actually on the other side, like at their house, waiting to buy your stock. There's a person in the middle called a market maker, and that Market maker is basically buying it from one side and selling it to the other. The easy way of thinking about this is when you go to a foreign country and you've got the currency exchange desk there and you transfer your dollars into euros. That's a market maker is buying your dollars and actually selling your euros, and they make a little bit of commission on the spread. So the question is, do you have the same sort of thing with these tokens? And it is critical in this space that you have to have that liquidity. So in other words, the blockchain is about people. If you launch one of these things and nobody wants to buy them because nobody knows about it, you're not going to have any buyers and sellers, you're not going to have any marketplace. So you do need market makers in place, and there are companies right now that are starting this whole, this new industry of blockchain market making, and it is very new, and but we definitely need them. Hope that answered the question. One more, and then I'm going to keep going. Yes, ma'am.
So,
You're very eager.
yes.
I love that.
You know, I want to know what you think about what we've heard that Bitcoin's a bubble. It's
Yeah.
just like the tulip bulb.
Yes.
It goes to the sky, it's going to come crashing down,
Right.
everybody's going to lose their shirt. What do you think?
So the question is Bitcoin a bubble? So we saw Bitcoin go up to $20,000 in the end of 2017, and now it's at what is it today? Like 4,000? Who's got the price here? Anybody? 3,800. I love it. $3,800.12. It's at $3,800. It's been there for like what? 3 months? 5 months? Something like that. Yeah. So it's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster, and many people bought in when it was $20,000 because it was so enticing, it was seductive. You would go to blockchain conferences and people were on the verge of mania. You could feel it in the air, this electricity, this tension. People were going crazy. It was the hype cycle, the fear of missing out, FOMO. And the problem is, as the price started to tank, because nobody knows what Bitcoin should really be valued at, we've never had anything like it, then the FOMO turned to what we call FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And when FOMO turns to FUD, everybody starts losing their mind, and the mania turns into depression, and people start selling, and they lose their shirt, and they're like, well, I'm never doing that again. And that's very much where we are right now in the hype cycle of blockchain. A useful analogy is 1995 to 2000, when we saw the same thing with internet stocks. 2000, the bubble burst, everything came crashing down to earth. But what happened after that? A slow rebuilding, and today, the most valuable companies in the world, the Googles and the Amazons, were created in that initial 5-year period. The most powerful companies of tomorrow are being built right now in this space. I guarantee you, companies like Circle and companies like Coinbase, these are going to be the huge corporate and financial players of tomorrow. That's why it's such a great time to be involved. And if I may just briefly tell you about my book, the book is the story of my company and how I risked everything. I took my entire company and pivoted it into blockchain, and the insane roller coaster, financial and emotional, that we have had since then. But I love it. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything else. All right, we've talked about 2 use cases of blockchain. First of all, digital currencies, paying somebody with this stuff. Second is tokenized, breaking up the security into fractionalized shares and selling those. And the third is what we'll call smart contracts. And a smart contract, broadly speaking, is that the 2 of us will record the value of us transferring one thing to, from one of us to the other. And that value can take many, many different forms. And I'm going to read to you briefly from my book, a true story that happened after we made this giant pivot into blockchain. I think it'll be more interesting if you can read it with me. All right. The story is that we had been contacted by a Polish energy drink company. A Polish energy drink company that wanted to make a blockchain-based rewards program on the side of their can. And actually, let me just show this to you briefly. So the idea was that when you buy a can of their energy drink, which was like Red Bull. There'd be a QR code. You know, like when you go to Starbucks, it's like Starbucks rewards. You get points for buying your coffee, and you can redeem your points for more coffee. That's the idea. Except this would be stored on the blockchain. Let's call it caffeine chain. So by storing it on the blockchain, this is actually kind of revolutionary because now it's not centralized, right? Who owns Starbucks rewards points? Starbucks. And there's no value to Starbucks rewards points. You can't go out and cash them out. You can't change your Starbucks rewards for like frequent flyer miles. But this, my friends, this would have real world value. So as you buy more and more of these energy drinks, you scan your code, and it turns into real blockchain-based tokens that we'll call caffeine coin. And so users will be able to accumulate this caffeine coin. And they could cash it out. They could go to blockchain-based digital exchanges, and they could invest in it. They could hold on to it like a stock and hope that it rises in value until it then crashes again when the caffeine high wears off. Or they could cash it out into real dollars. And so that was the idea behind Caffeine Coin, the Polish energy drink company. And I will read briefly from this. So I go to this Polish energy drink company, and I'm going to start here. The receptionist did offer me a sample of the energy drink, which tasted like Red Bull. It was a sleek white lobby pulsing with excitement, with framed photos of young people enjoying high-energy activities like dancing and crushing homework. Electronica pulsed from white Bose speakers. This way, the receptionist ushered me into a drab conference room where a trio of dour-faced executives were waiting. It was such a stark contrast from the lobby that I was thrown momentarily. "Hello," I greeted them a little too loud. The energy drink was kicking in. "John," the marketing director nodded. "Good to meet you in person." Sorry. My Polish accent's terrible. "This is my assistant and our CFO, Bartos. Pleasure to meet you all." We shook hands and I pulled out my laptop. I kicked back a can before I came in, so forgive me if I'm a little wired. "Yes." She stared at me stone-faced. "Speaking of wired," I said, "do you have a cable to your screen here?" This was the ritual before every meeting. Spend 15 minutes trying to get the laptop connected to the screen. "Where's your founder?" I asked politely. "He is not here," said the marketing director. "Okay." Silence. "Should we wait for him?" "He is in Bangkok." I blinked. "I came to Poland for this." "We can make the decision ourselves," Bartos stated stiffly. I noticed he didn't have a laptop, just a yellow legal pad. He nodded toward the screen, now connected to my laptop. "Please give your presentation." Blockchain. I was riding the Polish Red Bull. "It's the greatest technology of our time, and it is changing the world." I pulled up a slide that listed hundreds of blockchain projects grouped by industry. Blockchain is disrupting finance, healthcare, education, supply chains, even government. Blockchain is the future. I flew here from this blockchain convention. I clicked to a picture of the convention floor, packed wall to wall with well-dressed Swiss bankers. And boy, are my arms not tired, thanks to your beverage. Somber silence. I was fighting a Cold War. Here's the opportunity, I pitched. The official energy drink of the blockchain revolution. Imagine giving away your beverage at blockchain conferences around the world. Maybe you make a new flavor. "Can you double the caffeine?" I shouted. "We can double the caffeine, yes," the marketing director replied. "What the hey, triple it?" I clicked to the next slide, but it gets better. Imagine if every can comes with a coin. "In the can," Bartos asked, "people will choke." "Not a physical coin," I explained, "a blockchain-based token, your own digital currency." "The can is the cryptocurrency," the marketing director explained to Bartos. "The can is the coin. Customers will buy more cans so they earn more coins. They can buy and sell your coins, your blockchain tokens, on exchanges. It's like reward points," the marketing director translated. "Like reward points that have real-world value. I was on a roll. Can you imagine how that would boost sales? Your customers would drink nothing else. Let's patent this. How does this work? Asked Bartos, confused. Imagine a scannable code on the can, I began. A QR code, the marketing director helped me, like we did for our giveaway. Right. You buy a can, you scan the code on the can with your phone, it opens an app that awards you 1 coin. Let's call this caffeine chain. You're creating these coins, let's call them caffeine coins, out of thin air. But they have real world value because people will be able to redeem them for real world prizes like trips and concerts. The marketing director was nodding, like our sweepstakes last year. Just think of them like reward points stored on the blockchain. The difference is that people can buy and sell the reward points with each other. Who determines the value of the rewards points? Asked Bartos. The market, I exclaimed. So 5,000 caffeine coins earns you 1 trip, Bartos reasoned. And the trip costs us 5,000 zloty. 1 caffeine coin equals 1 zloty. Now people start trading caffeine coins for double the price. 1 caffeine coin now equals 2 zloty. Why would anyone redeem them for the trip? And why do I sound like Patrick Stewart? Maybe they start buying caffeine coin as an investment, I smiled confidently. Now say they go down to half the value, or 1/10 the value. Let's say you go buy as many caffeine coins as you want and redeem them for prizes that we have to pay for with real money. But that wouldn't happen, I objected. As long as they can be redeemed for real world value, the market will gravitate toward the value of your prizes. Humph, he tapped his pen. Who oversees all this? That's the best part, I replied, like an idiot. It's decentralized. No one owns it. So we have people buying and selling an unregulated security on an unlicensed exchange, and we are directly liable. He glared at me, and it is called caffeine coin. I looked over at the marketing director. No help there. It doesn't have to be called caffeine coin, I replied, crashing down from my caffeine high. Look, your founder is totally on board with this idea. He gets it. Our founder is in Bangkok, said Bartos. I glanced at his yellow legal pad, and he had written only 1 word crossed out. Blockchain. So that gives you a flavor of the book, which is the difficulty in not only explaining this in a very early stage, but also in figuring out how the hell this stuff works. All of the questions he asked were very good, legitimate questions about economics. We're in this weird new technology that's a combination of finance and also a combination of technology. And the new job, I believe, is going to be called a tokenomist. It's going to be a person that deeply understands economics and rewards and incentives, but also understands blockchain technology. So if you're in school, dual major in cryptography and economics. That is my advice to you. So this caffeine chain never took off. They did not move forward on it. And so we had to do it ourselves. Today, I am announcing to you, the very first audience to get this news, our new blockchain-based rewards program for my new book called Blockchain for Everyone. This was so hard to put together. It is a collaboration between Coinbase, which is the largest digital exchange, way of buying and selling Bitcoin and other altcoins, and a new digital asset called DAI. DAI is what's called a stable coin. A stable coin is a token that's designed to hold its value against the dollar. So 1 DAI equals $1, and you can cash in DAI for $1 and vice versa. So this is kind of a 3-way partnership between us, and this is how it's going to work. We're going to run a special limited edition of my book, Blockchain for Everyone. We're going to call it the Gold Edition. And the Gold Edition is going to have a scannable QR code in it. Each one is unique, and each one will be printed for that book and for you the user. And so you're going to scan that QR code in with your phone, and then here's what's going to happen. Check this out. You're going to be taken to the Coinbase wallet app, which I believe is the best app on the market if you are interested in buying Bitcoin or any of these new altcoins. Super user-friendly, super easy to use. You just create an account. You use your Touch ID to create your password. And then you're going to have $10 worth of DAI, this new digital currency, waiting for you in your account. Please give this some applause. I'm so proud of this. Oh, it's going to be great. So we're gonna do a couple tiers, and the biggest tier is going to be $25 worth of DAI. So you're going to get $25 worth of free DAI for buying a $25 book. Huh? Pretty good. Pretty good. And then after we sell those out, we'll have another tier that's going to be $10, and then we're going to have a third tier, which is going to be $1. And this is different from the standard book that will be sold in bookstores. We ran into a lot of problems trying to get this in bookstores because people are nervous that people are going to steal the books. Like, the books are going to be money now. So there's a lot of concern about how we keep this whole thing secure through the whole process. But I'm so excited about it. So it's going to be out in August. You can pre-order it today. So I'm going to stop here and ask for some questions on anything we've discussed today. And I'm going to take you way in the back.
Why did you decide to use DAI and not your coin?
Why did we decide to use DAI? Because they came to the table saying, we'll support this book and basically give away a bunch of DAI. So for them, it's a marketing expense, right? What they're getting out of it is all of these new users of DAI. And as I mentioned before, you know, the blockchain is about people. So the more people they get using this blockchain asset, the bigger it's going to grow. And you can use that DAI not only within the Coinbase wallet, but you can also use it to buy real-world goods, and you can cash it back into dollars as well. All right? Anybody else in the back there? Yes, way back there. Yeah, so the question is, DAI is not backed by gold or any other kind of real world asset, and so what gives it its value and what are the risks with buying DAI, essentially, right? Yeah, so these are very complex and good questions. Remember, the US dollar is also not backed by gold anymore. It's backed by the full faith of the federal government, which means it has value because we all believe it has value. And fundamentally, I make this point in the book, I believe that's what gives any money system its value. You have to believe and trust in it that it has value and that will hold its value. And so at this point, we have many different stable coins that are out there, and some of them are backed by gold, some of them are backed by nothing except trust and faith. We'll see which ones stand the test of time. This is a very interesting one that actually has held its value for, I think, about a year and a half now, despite some very difficult market conditions. So everybody I've talked to have done a lot of due diligence in DAI, and they really believe in it. We don't know long term which of these are going to survive, but I feel good at it. Yes, ma'am?
So earlier you said more people trade the more expensive. How do you make sure that real people like not trade the most?
Yeah, a good question. So the question is, if it becomes more valuable, the more people who join it, how do you know they're real people, right? So when you sign up for Coinbase, for example, if you want to get involved with this stuff, I would recommend buy a little bit of Bitcoin, even if it's just $100. Because what you can do then is like start to get in the flow and start to understand how this works. But when you buy it through a service like Coinbase, and there are many others, you have to go through what's called the KYC, Know Your Customer check. You got to upload a scan of your driver's license. And it's very scary for some people because they say, I don't want to give my driver's license away. It was way scarier for me in 2013 when I had to send a fax of my driver's license to somebody in Belarus that I had never met. And it's much easier now. But once you do that, they have verification that you are a unique person. And that's why they do that, to try to counter any kind of fraud or people trying to launder money. It's really for the safety of the system. Yes, ma'am.
So, John, thinking about the economics of supply and demand, somewhere along the way, where there'll be a limited supply,
So the question is around supply and demand. So Bitcoin is programmed to only have a certain amount over time, and it's kind of released to the public in bits and pieces over time. And at some point in the future, in several years, it's going to be done. That's it. No more Bitcoin ever. And the idea behind that, which was intentional, was that governments can kind of print money whenever they want. And Bitcoin, in a sense, was designed as kind of a protest against that, that let's create scarcity in it. And by creating scarcity, we hopefully create something whose value is known because its quantity is known. I don't know how that's going to play out. It's a giant experiment at this point. I have really come to appreciate writing this book that the role of the central bank is very important. And sometimes printing money is the right thing to do in severe financial crises. But here we're getting on very boring economics talk. The whole idea is there's a limited supply of Bitcoin, and it may grow in value in time because of that. But again, I believe the most important thing is people have to keep using it, or at least holding it, investing in it, in order for it to hold its value long term. You've been waiting very patiently. Thank you.
Thanks. Can you explain contracts a little more?
Can I explain contracts a little more? Smart contracts, yeah. So, you know, as we talked about before with the can is the coin, the idea is that you've got this kind of like smart contract, which is recording the value of the QR code that's being scanned in this caffeine coin that's going over to the user. That's what's called a smart contract. And this is something that's disrupting all of these industries today. So for example, let's say you have something like Airbnb. So Airbnb right now is a centralized company that holds all of the data around Airbnb. Airbnb controls all the information about the host, the ratings, how much you paid, where you stayed, et cetera, et cetera. It's all a black box, right? It's centralized. And so all of these new companies are being created on the blockchain to decentralize it. So a de-Airbnb, a decentralized version, would have some kind of smart contract where that's all held by code. And it's decentralized, meaning it's in this giant shared spreadsheet. Nobody owns it in the traditional sense. There's no company that owns that. And so from a user point of view, you would still have this app that would plug into this decentralized spreadsheet, this blockchain-based system, but you would be communicating directly with the other person, with the house renter, without any intermediary. It would all be handled on the blockchain. And the promise of that, we hope, is that, first of all, the house renters will make more money because less of it will be cut by the middleman. And the house stayers, the guests, will get a better rate because it will be able to be passed on more cheaply. So this is being done for ride sharing, like decentralized Uber companies, and basically any other kind of decentralized or centralized marketplace out there. Yes, sir?
So on the concept of smart contracts again, is there an application for tax preparation?
Is there an application for tax preparation? You mean like with blockchain to figure out the taxes that you...
It's effectively just rules of like triggers, right? The government says you owe because of these certain triggers. I mean, couldn't that all be facilitated?
That's a very good question. Does anybody know the answer? Is there a blockchain-based tax program? Does anybody know? Raise your hand if you know. Yeah. Yes, sir?
Put on tax, Bitcoin.tax, will take in your trades and then they'll give you your tax forms you need.
Yeah, and my understanding is the tax is basically like you're just being taxed on capital gains, right? So if you make a profit, it's kind of like gambling income. That was a terrible
That's
analogy.
interesting, like there's obligations there, but I'm talking about eliminating the need to prepare taxes for anyone, right, based on the blockchain and other things.
You're talking about the need to, we wouldn't need to prepare taxes for anybody at all.
Right.
Because it would all be on the blockchain. Well, guess what? The government still wants a cut of your Bitcoin earnings. So in other words, if you buy Bitcoin and you sell it at a profit, the government is going to tax that at the rate as if you bought any other asset or any other kind of investment and then you sold it at a profit, right? So it's going to treat it the same way, and if you are in this space and want to do that, consult your tax professional. Okay, I want to go over one more thing that's very important here. So what we're talking about is moving the locus of power from centralized companies and centralized organizations to decentralize, power to the people. I've only scratched the surface of what blockchain is able to do today. So all of these bloated companies and corrupt governments and the mega wealthy who are taking more than their fair share, what blockchain is ultimately allowing us to do is decentralizing that, giving power back to the people in the same way that the internet decentralized information, as we discussed. Blockchain is decentralizing value. And my personal belief is we can change the world's supply of wealth. We can change the flow of money from the ultra-rich to making a world that's more prosperous and more equitable for everyone. And that is what we mean when we say blockchain for everyone. It is a new technology that is fundamentally overturning power structures today. But in order for that vision to happen, we have to get people investing in it. And that is my mission. That is what I go around the world doing, is first of all, making this stuff easy to understand. Second, easy to use. And third, easy to invest. Easy to understand, easy to use, easy to invest. That is what we need to get the other 99% of the world who've never even heard of blockchain investing in this and seeing it as a real asset class. So some of you got our investor manifesto. I'm sorry we ran out of these. This is from our website, Bitcoin Market Journal. You can sign up for our free newsletter. We send it out every week with the latest on blockchain investing. But this basically kind of gives you a sense of our philosophy on how to invest in these new digital assets. And you'll even see sample portfolios in here for how to think about this in terms of your stocks, your bonds, and your other financial allocations. And the book goes into much more detail on this. That is the idea. We got to make it fun, and we got to make it friendly. And that brings me to the final moment of today's presentation. So we had this idea, and it was blockchain needs a mascot. We need kind of somebody who's friendly, like this is so geeky, it's so hard to understand. We need something that's just friendly and fun. So we said, let's make a mascot. And in a fit of just silliness, I said we should call him Blocky McBlockchain. And he should be a block with legs, with a chain. That's it. And I whiteboarded Blocky McBlockchain. And then our friends at this company, this blockchain company, Co-CreateX, we have a really rich ecosystem in Boston of blockchain entrepreneurs. And our friends in Boston, Co-CreateX, said, we'd love to build that for you. So today, they built the Blocky McBlockchain mascot costume. It is so funny and so awesome. And it's not in the building. So South by said, yeah, we don't really encourage cosplay here at South by. This isn't Comic-Con. But they said, you are more than welcome to take Blocky out on the street where he can spread good cheer and good news to everyone in the world and share the good news. So he's going to be next going to the German House, which is an event about blockchain and the creative industry at 4 o'clock, somewhere down on 6th Street, I think. I'm going to be moderating a panel, and Blocky will make his grand appearance there. But what I thought we could do instead is you guys could pretend that right now, at this moment in the program where Blocky was going to come make his great grand debut, dancing around and giving high fives, that this is actually Blocky McBlockchain. So ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome for the official mascot of blockchain, Blocky McBlockchain. Called Mind Hacking, now in its 11th printing, and I hope to see you over there around the corner. Thank you so much for coming today.